This is amazing.
Now we're in the Crown Street tunnel. Just about stand up. Welcome back to part 2 of Liverpool's very special place in history, where we will be venturing inside the Wapping and Crown Street tunnels. This is Crown Street Park, Liverpool. The park is landscaped over what used to be a goods yard, and before that was the site of the first ever purpose-built passenger station in the world. The first person to suggest the laying of a railway between Liverpool and Manchester was almost certainly a man called William Jessup, a canal engineer who had turned his attention to the construction of railways as early as the late 1790s. He surveyed a route and asked some Liverpool merchants to provide funds for the railway. However, he was not able to get backing and nothing became of his plans. William Jessup, Benjamin Outram and Thomas Gray all provided early plans for a railway. But it wasn't till the early 1820s that a project was actually carried out by men such as Joseph Sanders, Henry Booth and George Stephenson. On a side note, this is the house on Upper Parliament Street where George Stephenson lived as he worked on the railway. Eventually, a committee was put together and money was raised mainly by merchants from Liverpool and London. The early subscribers included 164 from Liverpool, 126 from London and only 54 from Manchester, plus 37 others, which demonstrates that it was predominantly a Liverpool-based project. It's worth noting that a lot of the committee acquired their money through the slave trade. So the railway is one of the many legacies of the slave trade. Incidentally, it's also worth noting that quite a few on the committee were abolitionists. Establishing the company, getting the railway passed through Parliament, and the actual opening day of the railway were all stories in their own right. But for now, I'm just concentrating on these special locations in Liverpool. The actual terminus station was just past the ventilator shaft, where the trees are now. Although the ventilator shaft wasn't there at the time, it was added much later in 1895-96. As steam engines started working the tunnels around 1870, 5 shafts were added to the Wapping Tunnel. Along with this one, 2 others are still there today. This one on Blackburn Place, this one near Grenville Street, and 2 others which are now capped off. One used to be near the Anglican Cathedral and the other was by Myrtle Street. We'll see the Wapping Tunnel a bit later. I'm now standing round about where Crown Street Station would have been. The station had a stone-built, 2-storey building facing the departure platform, and a shallow pitched wood and glass roof would cover the rail tracks. Omnibuses were used to bring the passengers from the town up to Crown Street in order to board onto the carriages there. 3 tunnels were constructed. This one here is the Crown Street Tunnel. Work started on this in 1826 and it was opened in 1829. It's not a very long tunnel, 290 yards long, 15 feet wide and 12 foot high. Once the passengers had all boarded in the Crown Street terminus there, the carriages would be pushed through and come down by gravity into this grand area and be connected to the steam engines. The Far Tunnel was originally the same size as the Crown Street Tunnel. It was originally used as a workshop. We can see on this drawing it was just a lock-up at the time. In the late 1840s it was enlarged to accommodate two lines, necessitating the demolition of the Moorish Arch and allowing freight trains to run into Crown Street where a goods yard was developed. This middle tunnel is what was known at the time as the Great Tunnel. It's about 1¼ miles long, just over. And this is a Wapping tunnel that went right down into Park Lane Goods Yard. Now we're in the Crown Street Tunnel. This tunnel went into the Crown Street station. It doesn't go all the way now, it's blocked off at the end where the park is. There's a broken gap here in the wall which allows us to see down into the Wapping Tunnel next door. Already lower than this one, it's got to go all the way down to the Wapping Goods Yard. This one goes on. You can hear the water coming in at this stage. The water's been coming in for a long time, as I want to show you down here. Not to move. This is what happens when you get the water dripping in for years. We've got all these stalactites. It's amazing. Almost touching the ground, some of them. And if you look on the ground, all over you've got what they call stalagmites. Stalagmites grow up, stalactites come down. This is as far as this tunnel goes. It's got a fence here, but it's actually blocked off with big piles of soil, which they use to make the park. But that used to go into the station there and came out. I will show you where it came out. About here was where the portal was covered over. So we're now in the Wapping Tunnel. This tunnel was excavated in 7 or 8 separate lengths. In October 1826, the first shaft was put in, soon followed by several others. The original line of the tunnel was planned to go directly under these shafts, but it was later altered and the tunnel actually passed about 20 feet to the north of these. The main excavation work didn't start till January of the following year. Nearly 300 men using pickaxes, shovels, hammers, chisels, all simple hand tools. First to excavate the shafts to the required depth, and then to dig out their own section of the tunnel in between each shaft. During just over 18 months of excavating, some 80,000 cubic yards of stone and sand was removed. Imagine being in here, constantly cutting with a pickaxe and breaking stone with a hammer and wedge, and every now and then blasting with gunpowder. And all this was done in candlelight. Each work party would do their own section, working both ways from each shaft, and meet up with amazing precision. And this work went on night and day, constantly. The passage was dug to each one of the shafts, and material would be drawn up through them using horse gins. A horse gin is where a horse would walk round in a circle, wrapping a rope round a big barrel, which in turn would lift a bucket up the shaft. When the tunnel was completed, it was lit up with gas lights suspended about every 50 yards, and the roof was whitewashed. It must have looked amazing. The public were invited to pay 1 shilling in order to parade through. This was allowed every Friday afternoon between the hours of 2 and 6. And every now and then there would be a band playing while the sightseers strolled through. Large crowds visited the tunnel, and on the 21st of August, when the local MP William Huskisson was in attendance, it's estimated that up to 3,000 people visited that day. We're now approaching the Crown Street air shaft. This is amazing. Up there I can see right up the tower that's in the park. All bricked off. The tunnel then goes down and emerges in what would have been the company's yard. It first emerged into a small open area before going into 3 short tunnels, which were described as a crow's foot configuration. The 3 portals are still there to this day. This main one and the 2 other ones which are very close by. They emerged into a cutting which was 22 feet deep and 46 feet wide, which had space for 4 lines of rail tracks. Between these were some lofty cast iron pillars supporting the warehousing above. The warehousing area has been for some time now a well-known car park. On the way back up there's an interesting little object. This is a form of communication. But what happened? This contraption here, when the train came up, it would have knocked the lever to make this bang onto the plate. It doesn't move now. It's totally stiff, but the plate would have made the noise and everybody would know the train was coming. It would also alert the driver as to how far he was from the entrance. These would have been put in at a later date when the steam trains were running through here. Remember when we were in the Crown Street tunnel, looking through the gap into this tunnel? Well, this is that same gap as we look back up into the Crown Street tunnel. Well, we're now nearing the end of the tunnel, and I do hope you've enjoyed looking into the caves and the tunnels in both part 1 and part 2. Until next time, thanks once again for watching. And if you haven't already, please subscribe.